Yeah, I was just like joking around, having fun. Like we were all excited. We knew we had a goal of winning the game, and we knew we were gonna win it. It was more
Mm-hmm.
like let's have fun while we have this, and when we get to the rink, let's dial it in.
Yeah.
So when after that, I was like, okay, I need to put on my headphones and focus. So I put on my headphones, and I went down and looked at my phone and changed a song, and that was the last thing I remember. Everything went black, and then 4 days later, I woke up in a hospital.
Welcome to this episode of Different Boat, Same Storm, a video podcast that's all about kindling empathy. I'm your host, Abhay, and today I'll be talking to Kaleb Dahlgren, an incredible young leader who will be sharing his story of overcoming adversity. Kaleb recently released his own book, Crossroads, his story of tragedy and resilience as a Humboldt Bronco. Kaleb's book is now trending #1 in Canada, and as Wayne Gretzky put it, it is a book that will change your life for the better. On behalf of the entire team here at DBSS, we really hope you enjoy this episode. This week, we are thrilled to welcome Kaleb Dahlgren to the podcast. How are you doing today, Kaleb?
Doing good, doing good. Thanks for having me on here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. It's an absolute honor to have you on this show. Kaleb, your story is one that's very inspiring, not just to me as someone who grew up playing hockey, but to all Canadians, really. So it'd be great if you could introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you. My name is Kaleb Dahlgren. I'm a 23-year-old student athlete at York University. I'm on the men's hockey team and have been playing hockey my whole life. Previously, before York University, I was with the Humboldt Broncos, Notre Dame Hounds, and played minor hockey all the way up AAA throughout my whole career. And so, yeah, it's really fortunate right now and lucky to be a part of York University. I'm taking in business commerce and hopefully get into chiropractic studies in the fall of 2021. And just living life, having a good life.
That's awesome to hear, man. It's so great to have you on this podcast just because, really being a Humboldt Bronco, your story is one that many Canadians know. But before we get into that, just a bit more about yourself. So you're someone who has type 1 diabetes. There have been NHL players that have got into the NHL with type 1 diabetes, like Max Domi being the big one that everyone knows. Can you talk about how having type 1 diabetes has impacted your life?
Yeah, so from a young age, I got diagnosed at the age of 4 with type 1 diabetes. And so growing up, I don't really have that positive influence in my life. There was a really big stigma around it, especially in school. A lot of people would look at me differently because I would check my blood sugar during class, or I'd have to have a juice box on me or fruit snacks, and they'd honestly kind of think I was lucky. They're like, oh, you're so lucky you have a fruit snack. Like, I used to love the Scooby-Doos. I don't know if you know what Scooby-Doo is.
Those are the best.
Yeah, those like little fruit snacks. So yeah, they're not even really fruit. It's like just gummies. But anyways, yeah, I had the Scooby-Doos and it was a little bit different. I never got bullied or picked on for it, but it was just like people knew I was a diabetic. I was the only diabetic in my elementary school. So like it was a red flag for sure that was our diabetic. But growing up, I had some coaches who doubted me. They would pass up on me in certain drafts or certain teams. They wouldn't pick me just because they didn't know what extent I would be as a player or if I'd impact the team negatively as being more, I guess, of a nuisance or distraction on the ice. Mm-hmm. And so I had some adversity with that, but was able to conquer it and still follow my passions and lead to a successful hockey career playing university sport hockey. So I think it's been a positive in my life, and I've had to handle certain situations that a lot of young individuals don't have to. It was not easy at the start. When I was first diagnosed, I actually was in the hospital, and I told my parents, I hate this doctor's house. I want to go home. And as a 4-year-old, it was the first time I heard the word hate come out of my mouth, and it wasn't that easy. So then once I did get home, I was like, nice, I'm home free, no more needles, nothing. And then 20 minutes later, they're like, yeah, we have to give you a needle. And so that was really hard for me. It would be hide and go seek, but I didn't want to be found. And I would tell them that they didn't love me. You're hurting me. This is brutal. Like, I don't like this. Why are you hurting me? And it took me about 3 months to actually fully grasp that I was a type 1 diabetic, and I had to live like this for the rest of my life. And so after that, I was able to find the positives and make the most of it.
Wow. Being 4 years old, that's not something that most people even, I mean, I think most people don't even remember what it's like when they're 4 years old. And I love how you put it, hide and go seek, but you didn't want to be found. That's so funny to hear. So now, can you tell us a bit more about your hockey journey, actually? Because I'm actually really curious to learn about that. So having faced that early adversity, having coaches doubt you and not think that you were good enough or that you'd be at a nuisance to the team, considering all of that, how did you battle that and still manage to play rep hockey at a high level, junior level hockey, and then ultimately get to the Humboldt Broncos, and then from there on where you are now playing with York?
Yeah, I think the big support for me was having my family, and also Bobby Clark. He was an NHL player before my time, and he had diabetes, and he was like kind of the pioneer of hockey for type 1 diabetics. He proved that you could still play hockey and have diabetes. And so growing up, I never really didn't have that positive influence to look up to. Like Bobby Clark was a little out of the region of my time era, and so I really didn't have the same kind of situation. Max and I are like 2 years apart, so we were both going through it at the same time. And so I think the big support was my parents and just being there for me, and my friends as well. My friends would always push me to be a better person on the ice and off the ice. And I think that was a really great support system for me to have success. And also just to prove people wrong, I had like a chip on my shoulder. It almost made me work harder in a sense because I had this added adversity on me already. And so it was like I had to work extra harder than the person beside me because I have something that they don't have.
And you had to prove yourself.
Exactly.
I totally get, like, I remember when I started playing hockey, I could barely skate. I was not like, I played D, and like I couldn't even skate backwards, and everyone was just like, what are you doing? But I think that adversity and, people telling you that you're not good enough really serves as a drive if you want it to do better, to skate better, to practice more, to shoot harder, and all of that together.
And I think like the good part about it is like there's two options for sure. It's like to take the positive route and be like, okay, I'm going to use this as motivation, or take it as a negative route and be like, okay, I'm going to believe everyone else says, I'm going to give up. And so there was like two options for sure. And I chose screw what everyone else thinks. I'm going this way. I'm going to try my best. And if my best isn't my best, then that's all I can do. And so I think that was the motivator, was like, let's give it my all. And if it turns out, at least I know I tried at the end of the day, instead of giving up based on false perceptions.
For sure. That's so great to hear, just because I think especially during this time of adversity now, as people around the world are still struggling because of the effects of COVID, that's such an important mindset to have, that life will continue to happen, things will happen. And I think this is a great segue into the next part of your story, really, which is the Humboldt Broncos. Can you talk about being a part of the Broncos organization and just the lead up to April 2018?
Yeah, so I'll take you back on a little journey here. So I was in Notre Dame with the Notre Dame Hounds. It's a prestigious junior A hockey program out of Wilcox. And I was there for 2 years. They asked me to play as an underage when I was 17, but I decided to stay back in North Battleford and play another season with my AAA team and develop there. And anyway, so I was in Notre Dame, and I was in my 19-year-old season. I was assistant captain. We had 8 20-year-olds. And so to be an assistant captain as a 19, when you have that many leaders in the year above you, is an honor in itself. And so the next year, I was supposed to be named captain of the team. The previous captain had his exit interview and came up to me after and said, hey, I just want to wish you congratulations on being a captain of this program next year. And I was just like, oh my goodness, wow, okay. So I went into my interview and exit interview of our season. Normally you have an exit interview after your season's completed with your coach. And I wasn't feeling right about my outside hockey career. Inside the hockey career, I was feeling very happy about my successes, and it was going to be an honor to be named captain of the program. But outside, I wanted more in my life. And so personally, I went up there and I actually asked for a trade. And I had to turn down captaincy of the prestigious program. And I wanted a trade to start Dahlgren's Diabetes, which is a program for type 1 diabetic children. And it's a mentorship program and leadership facilitating program for them to find their potential and let diabetes not stop them from their passions and dreams. So I had this vision, and I wanted it in a bigger center. And Wilcox is a town of 400, and I loved it there, but it just didn't feel like the the right spot for fans to really rally around and for people to come out and really support the Diabetic that was going to be announced as a Diabetes. And so for me, I ended up asking for the trade, and I was fortunate enough to go to Humboldt, which is every child in Saskatoon, at least my area in Saskatoon, dreams of playing for the Broncos. It's close to home. It's one of the most well-known, prestigious organizations in the SJHL. And a lot of people really wanted to be a Bronco growing up. So I was fortunate enough to be traded there. I talked to my head coach, Darcy Hogan, at the time and said, hey, I want to start this program. He's like, yeah, I heard about it already. Fill me in. I know that you wanted to start something more within the community and you wanted a bigger community, and that was why you asked out. And I was like, yep. And so I told him about it, and he was instantly hooked. And so then I was in Humboldt, became an assistant captain on the team as well, along with 3 other great leaders. And we had a full team of leaders. It wasn't just us that were leaders. We had a lot of people on that team that were really good men and brought leadership qualities that everyone loved. And so we had a great season. I was playing well, doing well, and we had a really great team, actually. We had a first round playoffs, and we beat the supposedly top team in the league. They were supposed to win it all, and we beat them in the first round quite handily.
Wow.
And so then we were in the second round against Nipawin, who ended up winning the league. But we had 4 games played, and we were down 3-1 in the series. But in the 3 games that we did play, that we lost, we had the leads with 5 minutes left in the third. So we blew leads. We blew 3 leads that ended up making us lose 3 of those games. So we could have been up 4-0, or it would have been 3-1 the other way. So I think that looking at it now, it could have been a lot different. It could have been 3-1 for us, or even 2-2 if we would have just not blown one of the leads. So I think that it was definitely a really good tight-knit series, and we were close. Both our teams were battling hard. We had lots of 20-year-olds on each team, and both really wanted to win. So we were going into, game 5 it would have been. It would have been game 5.
They were 3-1. You're going to game 5.
Yeah, going to game 5.
And this is a must-win situation, basically.
It is. Yeah, so we're down 3-1, and so on April 6th was our game, and we had a little meeting in in our dressing room, and then we all loaded up on the bus, and just a normal trip, normal day. There's really nothing different about it. I can't emphasize how normal of a day it was. It was just normal mundane tasks. It's the same as waking up, brushing your teeth. It's you're waking up, brushing your teeth, getting in your vehicle, going to work.
Yeah, hop on the bus, go to hockey game.
Exact same situation. And so we were getting closer to the arena, and my teammate Nick Shalansky, his house was on the same highway that we drive on. And so I asked him, hey, Nick, isn't your house around here? He's like, oh, yeah, I'll tell you. So anyways, in the meantime, I put on my suit. I like to be dressed. On our bus, we don't wear suits. We usually wear track clothes. But I ended up putting on my suit. And then I sat down. I was like, oh, yeah, my house is here. And then I was like, oh, nice. And then a couple rows up to the right, Parker Tobin was like, nobody cares. And then everyone on the bus starts laughing. And I chimed back, I care. And everyone's like, oh, haha, shut up, Caleb, all that. And so...
the normal hockey
Yeah, I was just joking around, having fun. We were all excited. Yeah. We knew we had a goal of winning the game, and we knew we were going to win it. It was more let's have fun while we have this, and when we get to the rink, let's dial it in. So when after that, I was like, okay, I need to put on my headphones and focus. So I put on my headphones, and I went down and looked at my phone and changed a song, and that was the last thing I remember. Everything went black, and then 4 days later, I woke up in a hospital. So, according to my first responder on scene, I was walking around helping people. I do not remember this whatsoever, and he said that I was helping people, and he was actually conversing with me. And so I don't remember that. I don't remember the 4 days after. Well, I was in the hospital, but I was talking to people. I had visitors. I met a lot of people that I have no clue. I met the Prime Minister. I met Don Cherry Ron McLean, Haley Wickenheiser, lots of well-known Canadian individuals that I met that were I have no recollection of whatsoever. And they call it post-traumatic amnesia. That's the scientific term for it. And so that's what I had for those 4 days. And I guess I'll end there with my story of it.
Wow. And I think that's just a jarring moment where it was a normal day. It was absolutely normal. You were joking around with your friends and then everything changed all at once. Can you talk a bit about what that was like waking up and the 4 days later finding out not only what had happened to you, I know that you suffered a trauma because of the accident, but finding out what happened to your team and what had happened in the days since the bus crash.
So on the first day, my parents, so it happened on Friday, April 6th, and then the Saturday morning, my parents told me what happened, because I woke up, and I guess this is like the first day I woke up, and I was looking around, and I was like, well, I must be injured. How did our game go last night? Did we win?
Wow.
And they were like, you didn't play. And I was like, yeah, I know I didn't play. I'm obviously injured. I must have got hit. Like, what happened? Did we win? And they were like, there was no game. And I was like, why? Was it because of my injury? Did they stop the game because of my injury? And they're like, no, there was no game. You guys didn't have a game. And I was like, well, did the refs not show up? Did I get hurt during sewer, which is when we kick the soccer ball around from each other and keep it up in the air? And I was just trying to think how do we not have a game, and how am I in the hospital right now? Couldn't really grasp it. And they said that you were in an accident, and I didn't believe them. I said, I must be dreaming. You guys are 100% joking. There's no way this is possible. I must be dreaming. And sure enough, they're like, no, you've been in an accident. And so I don't remember this at all. Then fast forward to 4 days later, I woke up in my bed, and I looked around, and I looked at my parents like, am I dreaming? And they're like, what? What do you mean? I'm like, am I in a hospital? They're like, yeah. I was like, how does our game go last night? And they were like, what do you mean your game last night? And I was like, how did our game go? Did we win last night? And they're like, Kaleb, there was no game. And they literally went over the exact same steps again. But this time, I ended up having my phone with me. My parents got my phone. And they said, check social media. Because I still didn't believe them. And I still thought I was dreaming. And it was the exact same process. So I checked social media. And sure enough, it said, Humboldt strong and prayers for Humboldt. And sticks out for Humboldt. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, this can't be real. This can't be real. And so that was when it first really hit me, the impact of what happened. I didn't even ask about my injuries. I got told 3 days later what I had. I didn't ask. I was way more curious about what happened to people, who was still here, who wasn't still here, what happened to them, what were their injuries. I think the worst part of it all was definitely not the injuries. I had a fractured skull, a puncture wound to my head, degloving, completely scalped on one side, broken neck, broken back, blood clots, ligament damage in my neck, loss of feeling in my neck, ear bleeding, bleeding both my ears, blood clots. And so it wasn't really the worst about it, though. I'd take that way over, I'd take that 100 times if I could, if they would all be here. I think the worst part was losing those people who I consider family, because you're with them every single day, and to lose those 16 individuals that you see every day and that you converse with is definitely a lot harder than the injuries.
Yeah, wow. It's tough. I mean, I'm an outsider here. I'm someone who grew up playing hockey in Canada. I love hockey, and these are people that you knew. These are your family, and it's heartbreaking to hear that. So, as an individual, Kaleb, you went from being in the middle of a playoff series with a team that was wanting to win this game because you knew that you had to, and waking up 4 days later realizing that Don Cherry, Ron McLean, Justin Trudeau, Haley Wickenheiser, they had all come and seen you, and your life had changed. Can you talk about, what that process was like? How did you begin coping with that experience, with the fact that 16 of your teammates were gone, and the fact that 13, including you, 13 people had traumatic injuries?
Yeah, I think one thing that people don't realize is that normally you have funerals to kind of have the last goodbye, and like you go to them and you're like, okay, this is like time for me to express how I feel. It's time for me to let go of everything that I had. But in the hospital, I actually wasn't cleared to go to the funerals. So that was like a really hard piece about it, was that I actually had to heal without that last closing. And so for me, I'd actually like to go through everyone's social media. I feel like you can kind of tell a lot through a person through their social media, things that they like, things that they post. Their personality really pops in their social media. So for me, that was like really helpful, was going through their social media, old videos, old pictures, and that was like kind of my closing for how I handled the healing process of losing the 16, and also to live my life to the fullest for them. I think that now that I'm here, and if I was on the other side, how would I want them to respond to it? And so for me personally, I want to live my life to the fullest for them. And I've always had that mindset before, to find the positives, to live my life to the fullest, and to never take one day off, like live your life like it could be your last day, and to treat everyone like it could be your last day. And so for me personally, that was just way more incentive for me to be like, okay, I need to continue on with what I'm doing, and to do it for the additional 16 that aren't here. And then for the handling of the other people's injuries, it's hard to process how all their varying injuries were. Like with my brain injury, I was supposed to be in a vegetative state. So to actually be able to comprehend and actually have the mentality to know how others are doing, to converse with them, was something that I was very grateful for in the first place, and let alone actually be able to remember them, remember their names, remember my name, remember my parents. Like, that was something so special that I was happy to have.
It was a miracle.
It really was, yeah. Like, the doctors have classified it as a miracle multiple times. And like I've seen probably 7 specialists, and every one of them said I'm a miracle. So I think that it's definitely something that you have to take with a grain of salt and just be thankful for, and to embrace the moment that you have. And so for me, it was to reach out and be that support for survivors and for the families that lost their loved ones, and to try to be involved as much as I could in their lives and in the Humboldt community too.
Wow, and that's so beautiful, the fact that there was such a huge tragedy, but as an individual, you took it upon yourself to be there for other people, to be there for the families of those that have been lost, to be there for others in the community that have been affected. Personally speaking, Kaleb, what was it like that? I mean, what was it that got you through that process of recovery? I know you talked about knowing that you had to seize the moment and make the most of your life for the 16 that were lost. Apart from that, really, like, so often when you're in a state of adversity, as you well know, as you mentioned earlier, there's 2 options: to either succumb to that weakness and to not try, or to see the positives and to go forward. What was it that made you want to choose the positives and keep moving forward?
Yeah. Well, first I want to just acknowledge how much support we had in the hospital and outside the hospital. Like, I didn't realize the gravity of the accident, not even until I probably like left the hospital, to be honest. Because when you're in the hospital, you're in your little bubble. I know, like, we're talking NHL bubble now, but like, you are in a little bubble that doesn't really see the outside world. Like, you have lots of visitors coming and all that, but it wasn't like I knew it was really out on the outside. And so the support was one of the major things for me that helped me. I wouldn't say it was like the motivating factor, but it was something that really helped me heal, for sure, from my trauma, emotionally, mentally, and physically. It wasn't just a physical injury. There were mental and emotional scars still. And so I think that was one of the big things, was having that support. And it also kind of put things in perspective, how other people have their own tragedies. You hear people that lose 6 people in a car accident, or 5 people in a car accident, and the whole family is devastated. Like, they literally lost 3 children, 2 adults, and they're forever gone. And they get maybe like 1% of the support that we got. And so for me, it's really like put into my awareness, I guess, of how other people have tragedies in their life but don't get nearly the support that they need. And so I think that's one of the big things now that I have taken upon me, is try to help people who have had adversity in their life, and to at least share my experience to hopefully inspire others to help them with their adversity. But I think, it's definitely, I think maybe even diabetes played a role in it, to be honest. I couldn't really pinpoint one thing, but I think even being dealt adversity in the past of having situations in my life where I've had to battle back. Also with injuries in hockey, we've had to battle back through that. But the process for me was taking it one day at a time and finding the positive in the one day. So the first day was me walking to go to the bathroom. That was one positive. The next day was me actually going out of my room and walking around the little, I guess, our main floor in the hospital. The next day, I was able to go down to physio. So it's just like finding those little positives. But my big goal was still to return to school. And given the severity of my injury, lots of doctors said, don't even try. Like, you need to take a year off. Like, don't go to school. Like, you really would, like, you would fail if you went to school. I've had at least 5 doctors tell me I'd fail if I went to school. Wow. Which also kind of ignited the other part of my diabetes where it came back, where it's like, if you're going to tell me this, I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of combination of things. I also think how I was brought up by my parents was another critical factor. I handled death differently than a lot of people do. For me, I focus on the time that I had with them, and just to be grateful for the time that I did have with them instead of for the time that I won't have. I focus on the time that I did have, because there's 8 billion people in this world, and for me to know one individual out of the 8 billion is something really special. And so I definitely hold that to myself, to at least remember them for who they were and who they were for me as a person. So I think there's a lot of different factors that played into me moving forward and me wanting to get back, but it was definitely the motivation inside of me that said, for the 60, I need to do this for them, but also for myself and my life. I want to do it for me too.
For sure. And what I really hear is that you as an individual, you have this positive spirit where you're going to find that silver lining, where every single day you want to see what you can do to make the world a better place, to support those that have been in accidents like yours, those that have been through these traumatic events, and make the world a better place. And that's really admirable, really, Kaleb. Like, I think when we come together, and as we saw when Canada came together during this time of tragedy, amazing things can happen. $15 million were raised in Canada during that time period for the GoFundMe campaign for the Humboldt Broncos and the families affected. Like, having that level of national support, what has that meant to you?
That has meant the world, honestly. Like I said and alluded to before, is how people don't have this kind of support. Like, I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. It was like the fastest ever GoFundMe campaign, and it was the second largest ever GoFundMe campaign, and it was on for, I think, 10 days or something. So like it was incredible, just like the outpourings, the reach, and how many people were affected. I think the big thing that people could relate to it was that you've all been on a bus, and like you feel safe on a bus. You feel like it's like a close time with friends. Like, I remember back in elementary school, like going on field trips. That was the best thing possible, was field trips. Yeah. And you're always on a bus with your friends, and you're like, oh, I'm going to sit in the back, or like, it was just like the fun aspect of being on a bus and how safe you felt. So I think that definitely could relate to a lot of people in Canada. But yeah, like when you go, and when I got to the hospital, the first sign I saw was pray for the Broncos. And I was like, okay. And then I kept on driving down the busier street in Saskatoon, and all these signs have like Broncos on them. They have green and gold colors. Every lamp post had like something about Broncos on it. It was, and like I couldn't really believe it. And so then I get into my neighborhood, and every house had a stick on their porch. And I was just like, holy, like, that meant the world to me. So it's just to see that, and then like also social media, tons of people reaching out. I had over, I think it would have been like 2,000 messages on social media, and then I'd say even more, honestly, probably around like 3 or 4. And I'm still working through them. I'm still on my Facebook now responding to people, and it's been a long time. I probably should have done it earlier personally, but I want everyone to know how grateful I am, and I want to take my time out of my day to send an actual real message, not just some copy and paste, like a real response to what they said, because it meant that much to me. And so I think just the support is unfathomable unless you're actually in that position. And so it's definitely helped me, and I feel like it's helped a lot of other individuals within the 29 families.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think coming together, that's such a powerful thing. Now, as we move forward, we're at another time of crisis now as a global society. People are losing their jobs, businesses are losing their property. There's widespread illness and death. Just considering how you have dealt with adversity, what was it like when COVID first hit, and in March really, when it was declared as a global pandemic, and how had life changed for you when that happened?
Yeah, so for me personally, I was actually lucky enough to have a course where it was prospects and perils of globalization. And so we were actually talking about a pandemic in the first semester.
Wow.
And how our world would adapt and change, and like specific reasons and ideas and things to do if there was ever a pandemic. And as things started to speculate and more came out, it was a year-long course. And so in the second semester, it was all focused on COVID and how there's this little spread and all of this. And so it actually really prepared me for the time of COVID. I already was stocked up on toilet paper, as everyone thought toilet paper was a major necessity. I already was stocked up on toilet paper. I was stocked up on diabetic supplies already. I was stocked up on like soups and non-perishable food items. I had everything in place already due to the course. And so I honestly feel like that helped me a lot prepare for this. And it wasn't just going to throw me in the woods and hope for the best. I had definitely the preparation. And so it affected me as hockey season got halted. Our team completely stopped practicing. No workouts, nothing like that. We all were kind of staying in our house to be safe. School moved to an online format. So for me personally, it actually worked out well. I was able to travel home. As a type 1 diabetic, I'm immunocompromised, so I am at higher risk. And actually there was a study done not too long ago that says that type 1 diabetics are actually the most prone to go into a hospital due to COVID illness. And so even over type 2 diabetics, which I thought would have even more of a concern. So type 1s are the highest risk population for being in a hospital. And so for me personally, at the time, I didn't really know how severe COVID was, but I was acting like it was the most severe thing ever, just to be safe and err on the side of caution. So I moved back home. I collected all my belongings out of Toronto, then moved back home to Saskatoon with my family. And it was a 30-hour trip, and I spent 2 nights in a hotel, but as soon as I got to the hotel, I had my sanitizer. I sanitized everything, cleaned every single handle, every single door, everything I was going to touch, I sanitized. Yeah. And it was just more of a precautionary, but at the end of the day, I think you either like can make the most of it or make the least of it. For me, I tried new things. I took up hobbies such as golfing or rollerblading that I've never actually really took up. Like I loved rollerblading as a kid, but I've never really rollerbladed much. So I got a new pair of rollerblades, and I've been doing it like at least 4 times a week now. And golfing, I have a golf membership, and I'm going out around 3 times a week as well. So I was able to do that. I picked up a summer course too to lighten my course load for next fall. And I've just tried to adapt myself and make myself a better person because of it. Due to the adversity I've handled before, I think that it also helped me in a sense to try to find something to work on and to improve on. And so for me, it was like flexibility was a major thing I wanted to improve on. Also, my reading speed I wanted to improve on, so I've been trying to work on that. A lot of people like new languages. I'd love to learn that eventually. I think like even guitar would be cool. Like just something to expand my horizon.
For sure.
I took up cooking classes too.
Wow.
I've really tried to make myself more well-rounded individual in this time because we are given more time, and what we do with the time will ultimately prepare us for the future. And so for me personally, I wanted to prepare myself to the best capacity possible for the future. And with this given, I guess, extra additional time, I thought that it'd be beneficial to do that.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Like I know, and our guests have talked about this a lot. Like for those that have been fortunate to be quarantined at home in a safe place, which really is a privilege.
It is. It really is.
Absolutely. And for us, I've actually been learning Spanish now that you mention it. So that's going pretty well. And, becoming a better person through this time, becoming better, more well-rounded, learning about different things, different skills. I think this has definitely been a time of introspection and reflection for a lot of us. So moving forward, Kaleb, considering how everything is going in the world, are you hopeful for the future?
Always. I always am, no matter what, honestly. I think this world is a great place, and I'm always hopeful no matter what, even during a pandemic. I think that it also kind of put in perspective some bigger issues surrounding our civilization and even our aspects of life. For me personally, I love the Black Lives Matter movement and how we're fighting systemic racism within our society. I love that. I think I'm all for that, and it's happening. It is a real thing, and I want it to be conquered. And so more awareness definitely will help conquer it. And then also the aspect of us trying to decide what's the best way to, if we wear a mask, not wear a mask. I like how we're kind of starting to realize how we have to come together as a society to actually have a greater purpose and a better for our future. And I really like that community-minded aspect, even though we can't physically all be together and lots of events have been canceled. I was unfortunate enough to have 8 different speeches canceled, events. There's lots of things that have been canceled, but there's also been a lot of things that have also been brought up that have been positives within our world, I think, personally. And so even the spare time that you have with family now, I think a lot of people have been stuck in their daily grind of going to work day after day, going back, checking their phone, going to sleep, going to work day after day, back to sleep. And it's just became a habit, but now it's kind of realizing, what do I really want in my life? There's a lot of time, like you said, introspection and reflection on oneself's values, beliefs, and life. And so I think that right now is a great time for that. Sadly, there's a lot of businesses suffering. There's a lot of deaths. There's still a lot of people that aren't really following guidelines or rules, but that's human life. I think you got to make the most of the situation you're in. And for businesses that are losing business, I feel terrible because it does ultimately respond on people that aren't following the rules. And so hopefully we're able to get out of this in the future. I think that for the future, we can use what we've learned in this time and better prepare for other outbreaks or other situations where we could be facing the same kind of detriment.
For sure. Coming together is so important in these times. And as we've seen through public health, it's really dependent on the community acting with one another. It's so important that everyone wears a mask when you're going out. And if only one person's wearing a mask, it's not as effective as if 90% of people are. And that's such a great idea, just because I think as people now, we're recognizing the importance of us coming together as a community and doing things for one another. We've seen amazing things like food delivery during COVID. We've seen people opening up free daycare centers for children. It's so beautiful to see how people work for one another. And the second point that you bring about, the really acknowledgement of systemic racism in not only the United States, but here in Canada as well, and recognition of how we as individuals can work to improve our systems. I guess as we begin to wrap up, let's talk about the acknowledgement of systemic racism and racism in hockey. I know you, again, hockey's always been a big part of your life. It's a big part of my life, and really recognizing how anti-racism in hockey is so important. How do you think we move forward as people involved in hockey, and as to our listeners that are involved in hockey or other sports? How do you go about improving means for minorities to get involved in sport?
I honestly don't think there's one direct way to do this. I think it involves a lot of different personnel, but for me personally, I think there's a lot of programs out there that have kind of included hockey. For me, I was fortunate enough to be a part of Heroes Hockey in Toronto. It's called Heroes Hockey, and it's for children that are underprivileged and unable to either afford or have a time commitment to hockey but want to learn the game. So they sign up and they receive free equipment. They get to go on ice for free and just try out the game. And I think that is such a great inclusive environment to get them involved in the game. And I think that we need to have more of that, and even more knowledge throughout Canada-wide, and have more programs like that in place so that children who may not see hockey as a part or fit for them can actually get involved. And then I also think is using their platform as has been done right now, and acknowledging that there is a systemic racism within society, Canada and USA, and probably around the world, honestly. I have not been fortunate enough to go travel other places, but within Canada and USA there for sure is. And so I think that to have the acknowledgement of it actually being there is step one for sure. Step two is the program to kind of get more people involved, more inclusive, higher promotions for colors of all races. And I think that with that, we can start moving forward, taking proper steps to actually having a completely diverse league.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important that like the leagues that we see all the time are representative of the people in Canada, in the United States, in North America, and showing that anyone, hockey is such an amazing sport. I've had the immense privilege of playing hockey, and I really do think it's a privilege because like the skills that you learn, the friendships that you gain, and of course all about this. Hockey's beautiful, and it's Canada. And I think that spirit of coming together happens in hockey. Hopefully, as we move forward with the NHL and junior leagues and the hockey world and the sports world coming together, we can make this positive change. We can listen to diverse voices. We can really hear what people think and work together to create this change. Kaleb, it's really been a privilege and an honor having you on the show. We've talked about everything from your story about being a type 1 diabetic, running Dahlgren Diabetes, an amazing program focused on mentorship for youth where they can come together and really be supported to play hockey. We've talked about your story and the Humboldt Broncos tragedy that took away 16 beautiful lives, but really had all of Canada come together and recognize that hockey and the spirit of coming together is so important. You as an individual have overcome personal tragedy, and you've really showcased what it means to be positive and optimistic in the worst of situations, in the most adverse of situations, and moving into this period of COVID and uncertainty and the acknowledgement of systemic racism in society. You've recognized that as people, all we can really do is look for the positives and move forward. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I think even like supporting public as well, like supporting other individuals in this time is huge. And so to always be there for someone and to do one good deed a day. So for me, my one good deed was sending a text to someone today to check in on them. So I think it's the little things that add up to the big picture, and us as a society can do it. So thank you very much for having me on here. I really do appreciate it. It's been an honor talking to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Kaleb. Once again, everyone, this has been another episode of Different Boat, Same Storm, a video podcast aimed at kindling empathy amidst the global pandemic. Today, we talked to Kaleb Dahlgren, an amazing young leader. He was actually recently named the emerging leader in Canada for the Prairies, alongside my older brother, coincidentally. That's how I know Kaleb, and that's why we're talking today. But this has been another episode of Different Boat, Same Storm. We'll be back every week, same time, different boat, same storm.